Welcome to the third video on how Hudson Valley farmers manage soil health. This is Aaron Gabriel with Cornell Cooperative Extension. Today we are at Landview Farm in southern Washington County, New York. Landview has been working hard and have been successfully improving the soil health on their large dairy farm. It's June 10th, 2019. And what we have here is a smooth roller that's flattening the rye, which is in the pollination stage, and the corn planter is following right behind. It's been a wet spring, and so having a cover crop like this rye crop helps to draw the moisture out of the soil. And it's still a little bit moist, just dry enough to get the corn in the ground. You may ask, why would you try to plant corn through all this rye? And the answer is that all this biomass is adding organic matter to the soil. Adding organic matter to the soil is really the key to soil health. You're feeding the microbes and soil organisms, and you're putting a nice mulch on top of the soil to protect it from a hard rain or from burning sun. Organic farmers would need a fluted roller, which would crimp the stems and actually kill the rye without using an herbicide. In our region, corn is planted right through from the beginning to the end of May, and the growth stage of the rye is going to change from early May, where the stems are elongating, into pollination about the middle of the month, and then seed set by the end of May. So depending on when you're planting your corn, you're going to have to manage the rye differently. Certainly you don't want it to be setting seed at the end of the month. Early in the month, you might want to spray it and then plant, or you can plant and spray it later. For rolling, it won't work when the rye is young. You have to roll it at pollination so that you are actually crimping the stems. And if you roll it too late, you'll get seed set, and then you'll get rye growing in your cornfield. So what's the story with insect pests in cover crops like this? Well, we get a lot of different reports, but certainly you can get increased black cutworm, increased wireworms and grubs. So you really need to know the history of the field, what pests typically are a problem, and be sure to plan ahead and manage accordingly. To make corn planting go smoothly, you have to set up your planter right. Row cleaners in the front are important, and the closing wheels in the back are obviously important. When I ask farmers which are the best, I get a lot of different stories. So the best farmer advice I've had is that for the closing wheels, try a couple different closing wheels on the different units in the back and see what works best for you. You would think all that long rye would wrap around the row cleaners and the closing wheels, but as long as it's green and rooted in, that typically does not happen. It's important that it's not dead and dry and breaking, otherwise dead plants will wrap around the spinning apparatus. If you decide to mix legumes into your cover crop, understand that rolling, even with a fluted roller, will not kill legume cover crops. The recommendation really is to flail mow them, or if you're a conventional farmer, you can use herbicides. In this field, 60 pounds of rye was broadcast on October 3rd in the previous fall, and some manure was applied, and manure was also applied in the spring. You can see that we have a fairly thick stand of rye. It could be thicker. For organic growers, the key is to plant rye by mid-September, and maybe plant it a little bit heavier than 60 pounds so that you have about 4 tons of biomass. And when you roll that much biomass in the spring, that should control weeds for most of the season. What's being planted today is 90-day BMR corn. There's 60 pounds of nitrogen being applied through the planter. And 2 days after planting, a burn down and a residual herbicide will be applied. On July 23rd, the field received 100 pounds of sidedress nitrogen with sulfur, and it was harvested on October 10th at 13 tons per acre of yield. which was a little disappointing to the farmer. Typically, his BMR fields planted in May yielded about 4 tons more. Planting in June was a bit late for BMR corn. And also, they eliminated one herbicide in their typical mix so that the grass weeds were a little bit heavier than normal. Several years ago, Landview Farm began using cover crops, and they've never looked back. They've noticed big differences in soil health, in crops yielding better, and surviving stresses of drought and too much rain that we often get. So between cover crops, adding manure, and reducing their tillage, their soil health has improved, as have their crops.